Thank you for coming and welcome to the Acfn's online forum on addictions, where we'll be able to explore this issue from an Indigenous perspective. This speakers forum is the first of several planned for the month ahead, so stay tuned. My name is Claudia Simpson. I am the Health and Wellness Manager of the Athabasca Chipewyan First Nation. I'm honored to be your guest today for this 3-hour addictions event that brings together different speakers, advocates, and support of people struggling with addictions. Today's panelists will be sharing their insights and testimonials through storytelling. Addictions have many faces and come through in many forms. I'd like to introduce you to the facilitator of today's forum, Bill Ward, as he has mentioned earlier. Bill will lead the panel of guest speakers on how spiritual emptiness can manifest as destructive behaviors. Join us for the next 3 hours to learn more on that and that we are not alone in our struggles with addiction. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to the facilitator of our speakers forum today, Bill.
Thank you, Claudia. My name is Bill Ward, and I am your facilitator for the day. Just a little bit of background about myself. I'm 52 years old. I spent many years in addiction, suffering both bodily and mentally, spiritually and physically. About 10 years ago, I'll be coming up on my 10th birthday. So 10 years ago in March 22nd of this year, I will have 10 years of sobriety. When I say recovery and sobriety, there's a big difference to me. To me, I think recovery is like actively seeking a better life and doing things conducive to better myself and to help spread, a positive message, whether it be in recovery or just life in general. So my main goal in what I do is to bring, hope to people, and recovery's changed my whole life. Part of my journey was, sometimes it's hard to talk about, right? I had 3 daughters. I have 3 daughters, and I had a wife, and we had a pretty decent life, but because I was a drug addict, I ended up destroying our lives and burning it down pretty good. And eventually I sought a path of recovery. And my father, who is going to say our opening prayer today, is the main reason that I found a path of sobriety. My father's name is Emile Ward. He spent 42 years in recovery to this day. He has dedicated his life to helping our people, working at numerous treatment centers, workshops, traveling Canada, sharing his own experience and what it's taken for him to get well. And so he passes that message on to other people. If it wasn't for somebody else, like my father in this case, it's always somebody, right? There's always somebody there to inspire us. And for me, it was my dad. And then after that, it was a guy who mentored me and took me to a different place. So to get this show on the road, I'm going to get my father to open us up with a little tiny talk and an opening prayer. Dad, take it away.
My name's Emile Ward. My spirit name, Studham, means little horse. I'm a full-blood Cree from the Driftpile Band south of Slave Lake, small little reserve. So I'm just going to open with a little prayer and share a little bit. I'm holding the feather to keep. So we have a truthful session here this afternoon with myself and the speakers and his presentations. And I have the smudge here in front of me. It's been lit here for a little while. We've all smudged to prepare for this. So I'm just going to say a little prayer for all of us here today. Heavenly Father, Creator, Higher Power, thank you for this gathering of concerned people for themselves and for others and for their families. Thank you for the heartful day, for the heartful day and all experience that came in with it, that come with it today. For the organizers, their wisdom and genuine caring for others. I pray for heart-to-heart sharing of our life experiences related to today's topic. I pray that lives or thoughts will change in a good way today. I pray that the power of the fellowship can affect healthy changes. Aye. Yeah, it was 44 years ago, actually, son, that I hit my bottom after a domestic violence incident with my wife, and which was the final message of what I told myself I would never be. I would never be like my dad, who was a drunken, hardworking, but a drunken, wife-beating, neglecting family parent, and I swore I'd never be like him. And I never drank. I never drank right up until my last year of high school. I was 19 years old. I was taken away from my family, four of us younger ones, because of all the violence, abuses, and alcoholism and all the dysfunction that go with it. And we were taken away we became wards of the government, which is like Child and Family Services today. And we were bounced around Edmonton. And I had my older brother and I ended up at St. Mary's Boys Home. And the two younger ones, they got adopted pretty quick by a really nice, good family in St. Paul, Alberta. And but I fell in. Actually, the school saved my life because I fell in love with education. I fell in love with sports, and those two things were a primary driver of existing, of living. It was a life that I'd never known, and it was just I just continued to. I skipped a couple of grades. Apparently I was pretty smart, and I graduated in 1966. I was captain of the football team. I represented the school in a lot of ways in so many sports in school, and I was very popular. And I had a great life. I'm looking forward to a great future. And my first drunken in high school was at 19 years old. I was my last year of high school. And I went into a blackout and I fought with half of the football team that I quarterbacked. I fought with the principal we cared a lot about each other because I represented the school, a lot of sports. And also I fought with my foster brother. I had a great foster parenting. I had some good homes. The last 4 years of my schooling, I was in one foster home. I fell in love with that family and my foster brother, and I still fought with him. And this was all in the blackout, not understanding what had happened. This was all explained to me by my foster brother, and I couldn't believe what had happened. I just realized I had just become my dad, and I swore I'd never be. From that point on, I tried to control my drinking, not knowing that I suffered from a disease of alcoholism. I didn't know that until I hit my bottom in February 26, 1980 was my last drink. And after a violent incident with my common law, I entered, the judge, I was charged with assault causing bodily harm. And the judge gave me a choice, either go back to jail, I had a record already, go back to jail or go to treatment. I knew nothing about treatment, didn't even know what it was about. And I said, well, I'll go back, I'll go to treatment, because I thought, well, I've been back to jail. I've been to jail. I don't know what treatment's like, but I'll go there for a holiday. Anyway, little did I know that it, it would change my life forever to this day, because there I learned about a disease. There wasn't, that was the only thing wrong with me, is I suffered from an illness of alcoholism that was chronic, progressive, and fatal if untreated. So I understood those kinds of things while I was in treatment for 6 weeks. I understood the Alcoholics Anonymous. I understood the what we call the three-headed dragon: drinking, thinking, and feelings. And all of these, so much teachings, the power of group therapy, the confrontation that my group about my way of thinking, my personality, my defense mechanisms, all of this, combined, started making sense that I wasn't a bad person. I was a very sick person. And once I understood that, and I believed that maybe Alcoholics Anonymous could possibly be a solution to avoid having some kind of healthy lifestyle. Anyway, I graduated with a strong belief of Alcoholics Anonymous. Step 2 is came to believe. I came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore sanity, and it was a very, very not a very strong belief at the time, but there were so many coincidences that start to happen that helped me to come to believe. And 3 years later, I'm just going to zoom along very quickly. 3 years later, I got railroaded into helping people in Yellowknife. I was traveling all over as a sales rep, and a couple of people thought I would make a good counselor, and ended up working in a treatment center in Yellowknife. And from then on, and I'm still in that field. I've done just about everything you can think of in addictions, directing treatment centers, training counselors, community development. There was just so many pioneering days back in those mid-'80s in Indigenous programming for addictions. I was just very fortunate that I was part of that movement, and we did mobile treatment. We did we did just about everything you could think of. We had ideas, we try them, and a lot of the programs and developing that's happening today were a result of those early pioneers, trainers, recovering people. And I'm so fortunate to be able to share that with people even to this day, as trying to retire, but we don't retire from this business. And I've been asked to continue helping in various ways. I will still work part-time in working with men on domestic violence and anger at a treatment center here in Calgary. I'm a elder support worker for Indigenous agency, and also doing special speaking engagements. I even elder at the citizenship ceremony. So there's just so many things still happening and exciting for me, and it's all there for anyone that enters this beautiful life of recovery. Thanks for listening.
Hey, Dad, before you jump off, you've worked in Native treatment centers and helped our people, the First Nations, Indigenous people for many years. What have you seen in the culture or about the culture that's really helped you, or what you've seen, how it's helped other people? How impactful has the culture been in your recovery and others that you've seen?
Well, first of all, I was assimilated as you can get. I knew nothing about culture from my family. I was raised in white schools and white foster homes. I knew nothing about my culture. Wasn't until I came into the helping field when I got railroaded into counseling in a native treatment center in Yellowknife when I was surrounded by dog rib, slavey, uh, Eskimos, all indigenous people, and started realizing that I felt out of place. I was awkward, and but the creator took over. Planted a Lakota Sioux native from the Black Hills, was doing workshops at the center, and we got to be close friends for a couple of years, and began to learn about my culture. I started to learn about our spirituality. I had been raised Catholic through the boys' home and in foster homes as well, and understood, studied a little bit about other religions, but never anything about my culture. I was even embarrassed about my Indianness, and it wasn't until I started going to ceremonies and started going to a pipe ceremony and understanding and answering questions and practicing some of the simple things that they told me and praying, even though at the time I really didn't believe what I was asking for, but kind of fake it till you make it. And then, like I said, step two, came to believe a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. And that's what exactly started happening for me.
Mm. That's amazing, Dad. That's amazing. Okay, Dad, we're going to get you back on at the end of the show to do a closing prayer. But for now, we'll get you to shut off your camera and mute your microphone. And I'm going to introduce the other speakers. And thanks, Dad. Appreciate you.
Thanks, son.
So today we have a selection of speakers that I've handpicked from a group of people that I know. Our first speaker is going to be Audrey Cook. I met Audrey probably about 3 years ago. And, different types of fellowships. There's kind of like Indigenous recovery fellowships, and then there's 12-step recovery fellowships. And I would see her at both. And what I noticed about Audrey, and I got to be real here, right? This isn't just about me coming here and like making recovery all about roses and unicorns and rainbows. Like, that wasn't Audrey's story when I met her. She was suffering and she had some sober time in. When I talk about being sober versus recovery, sobriety, just being sober, is very painful still. And Audrey, I'm sure in her story, is going to reveal a little bit of that. But since she went into recovery and she really did some work and she really looked at herself and she built a fellowship of people around her and she changed almost everything. And she's a flourishing member of her culture. Recovery had brought her culture back to her that she never had really. And she just lives a vital and beautiful life today, not without its own struggles, right? And that's the other thing that recovery allows us. It allows us to like meet the challenges of life and be able to learn through these challenges and not let them take us down into misery and depression. So we have Audrey coming up here. Our second speaker after Audrey is going to be a friend of mine named Robbie Daniels. Robbie Daniels started Sober Crew. And I'll do more of an intro when he gets up. But he's a pivotal member in Calgary recovery community for our Indigenous brothers and sisters. Sober Crew has a Facebook page following of about 7,000 people now. And I will give you more details on him when he comes up. He's just an amazing human being. About 2:05, 2:10 or so, we're going to get Lucy and Roberta They're each going to tell you a little bit about their journey, a few minutes about their journey, and then they're going to each sing a song that they know. And I know Roberta from my Sundance family. I do sun dancing up by Edmonton, and I met her through the family, and she's just a beautiful soul carrying a beautiful message, and she's a younger woman in recovery and in earlier recovery, as well as Lucy, who's my daughter, who's in early recovery, and she's a younger woman as well. And I want them to share their experience about being young in recovery and what it's taken and what are the challenges. And then they're each going to sing a song and kind of, talk about the song a little bit. And then myself at 2:20 or 2:25 or so, I'll come on, I'll share a little bit of my story, talk about the spiritual malady, that drives all self-destructive behaviors, including addiction. My dad talked about violence and physical violence and in and out of jail, and that's all a result of a spiritual sickness, right? And then we need to medicate it with something, and drugs and alcohol is a real good medicator until it's not. So I'll describe a little bit more about the malady and share that and kind of intertwine it with my story. Then at about 3:05, 3:10 or so, we're gonna get another lady that I handpicked, and she's from way up north. She's from the Northwest Territories, Inuvik, and I met Shannda about 3.5 years ago. She didn't really understand what recovery was, and again, she thought it was about being sober, but she met a group of people in the fellowship that she was trying to find her path, and they really gave her good guidance. And Shannda has grabbed on to recovery and ran with it and is just doing amazing things in her life for her children, for her community, just for all people. That's what recovery does, allows you to serve other people as well. After each speaker, I will be opening the floor to about 2 to 3 to 5 minutes of questions. So if anyone on the screen, wherever you are, if something hits you and you would like to talk about it or ask how they got through it or ask what was that like, what was that feeling like, feel free to bring that question to the speaker and they'll give you a description of what it was like and how they got through that in their recovery. So Shannda will finish us off there at 3:05 or 3:10. And then maybe we'll do a general open session of questions and answers to see if anything came up for anybody at the end. And then at about 3:45, 3:50, we'll do a little bit of closeout and end our event today. So without further ado, I would love to introduce Audrey. So Audrey is from Manitoba. She will tell you in her story about her journey of finding her culture. I'm not gonna tell you much more. I'm just gonna let her tell you. Audrey, take it away. Thank you very much, Aud.
Gretch Bill. Bonjour, Anin. Anishinaabe Kwe, Audrey, and Indigenous cause. Manadu, Anamaki, Beniji Kwe, Ninzawin, Wewe Sikapo, in Ishkuniganing, Manitoba Treaty 4 Territory, Inda, Calgary, and Wawashkashi in Indodem. So I just introduced myself. I said hello and how are you? I'm an Anishinaabe woman from Wew'suwet'en, and that's in Treaty 4 territory, just over the Manitoba-Saskatchewan border, right off the Yellowhead Highway. And my spirit name is Spirit Thunderbird Woman, and that was given to me actually by a Cree elder in about 2008. So and then I've lived here in Calgary for 10 years. And it was from fleeing a very physically violent, abusive relationship. So yeah, I made it here. 10 years ago. So I got sober September 12th, 2020, so mid-pandemic. There was no treatment centers open, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I lived at home with my two children and then my daughter's partner. And at the end of my drinking and drugging days, like that last day, I just couldn't stay drunk. I couldn't stay high. And all that contemplation and thinking about it, that was the end. That's where I started to finally say, okay, I think I'm done. And Creator got me home at many times actually. And I had to stay in my room for 4 days. I couldn't trust myself to even like go into the kitchen. It was always in my bedroom or in the bathroom because I didn't know if I had stashed anything anywhere in the house. And I just wasn't in a state of mind to be really conversing with anybody, like my kids or even my pets, my poor pets. And on that fourth day, early in the morning, a friend of mine messaged me on Facebook and asked if he could call. So I said, sure. And he asked if I had a big book. But he brought a message out of that. And then we had a little bit of a talk. I was, of course, still really very emotionally just broken. All I could do was cry. And then we hung up. And not even a minute later, my brother, who has always taken me under my wing, he's been in recovery he just celebrated 29 years. He messaged me and said, hey, do you remember this meeting I typically go to when I'm in Calgary? And I said, yes, I do. He goes, I don't care what you're doing. Get over there and get into the room. So, I'm going to listen because he's got 29 years and what do I know at 4 days? So I did. And I ended up having to stay in that room all day long. They had anywhere between 5 and 7 meetings a day, actually 5 and 8 meetings a day. So for the I'd have to say first 6 months, maybe I stayed in there for every single meeting that I possibly could. I would go home, check on my kids, make sure they were okay, had what they needed, because when I was out there, I was just sending money for food, or I'd send them skip the dishes, or I wouldn't send them anything at all. I don't know. I don't know for sure. But there's this one moment. I wish she could listen, but a friend of mine, she was at 9 months sober and I was at about 6 months sober, and she was just full of this energy, and she got up and shared in the women's meeting. She's just like, I just love you all so much. I just have this amazing love and I don't know what to do with it. So I'm just going to share it with you all. And I sat there and I just gave her like the weirdest, dirtiest look ever. And 3 months later, I did exactly the same thing. So it's possible to like have these emotions change. And for me, it was actually just shortly after that, I was in another women's meeting and I went to go have a sip of my coffee, and just one little drop spilled on my shirt and the tears started to flow. Everything finally came out because of a drip of coffee. And I love that that's part of my story. It took a while for me to get a sponsor. I think it was at about 9 months sober before I actually got a sponsor. And it was at a different fellowship than what I was used to. It was like really high vibe, high solution based meeting. And what a relief to finally have somebody that would take me through the steps and kind of like have this guide for me to use instead of just being sober, but to actually begin to recover. Excuse me, sorry. He's serving us wonderful drinks here, like they have like berries in the drinks. um, so I ended up having a sponsor for a little while, but at that point, I still didn't have my own voice. I was going along with what people were suggesting, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with that because you have to find your own footing somehow, some way. But I was kind of listening to people's opinions about other people who had really good, strong recovery. And there was a point in one other meeting, a certain somebody named Bill, I think, I would avoid him at all costs. But there was one meeting, he got up to do his share, and I'm pretty darn sure it was on step 6, Bill, because you're all step 6, I think. Anyways, I was sitting there ignoring him, not paying attention, and then something popped out about pain. And have you had enough of it yet? What are you doing to change it? Have you got a higher power? All of it was all combined in one swift sentence. And that's where my mind had been changed about the way I was doing things. And yeah, so I'm in year 4. Actually, I just celebrated 4 years in September. So I've basically had a sponsor, one per year. And I just recently got a new sponsor and working really hard I'm actually on step 4, which is amazing. It couldn't have come at a better time, actually. I'm facing some health issues, and part of step 4 is working your fears, right? So when I started, I had like 4. And then this whole issue with having to get surgery. I just had surgery yesterday, actually, and I just got out of the hospital before I got here. But recovery is everything to me. So if I'm recovering from surgery, I can do it in recovery as well and help you all just to see that nothing's going to stop me. And if sharing my story is going to help somebody else relate to what they're going through, then for sure. But yeah, it's my step 4s, my fears. The list really grew longer. But as I got to surgery day, really connecting to my higher power, who I call creator, and just asking him to take them away and have me be who he has planned for me and intended for me to be, that really changed a lot of things going into surgery, and actually the relationship I have with my kids. My daughter's been really struggling with the loss of her father. Her dad died about a month ago, and it was an alcoholic death. Something I also suffered from with my dad dying. So she's been struggling with her own addictions. My son, he's 19, and he actually just got into recovery on when was it? Last Friday. He asked me to take him to a meeting, and I took him. And then after that, he's been going on his own. He found this young person's meeting. He came home. When I went to pick him up, he had this vibe about him, right? This is when you know you've found something that you needed. Well, he has this energy going for himself. And yeah, the little bits of depression hit, of course, that's natural. But yeah, so for me, knowing that my recovery really does have an impact in my home and setting boundaries works. I'm supposed to be, leading by example. And that's what's been going on. They've been hearing me, they've been seeing it, and it has impacted my two younger kids. Well, they're 24 and 19. And I think the hardest thing when I first sobered up was realizing that my older children saw everything. The worst part of my addiction, they saw. So trying to rebuild those relationships was my biggest fear. It's still on my list. I still have to talk to my sponsor about it. But and knowing that my daughter was suffering with the loss of their dad, right? It was all 3 of their dad. I was able to talk to my older sons and just say, this is what's going on here. And I'm afraid, but to know that my oldest son can say, I love you, mom, and we're all going to be okay. To me, that shows that he sees the hard work I've been doing, that I'm genuine about it, that I'm authentic about it. I'm not just saying things just to say things. I have changed everything about my life. 4 years ago, I didn't know what to do with my time, so I learned to bead and I learned to sew. I started making ribbon skirts. I started making little bits of jewelry, and those things I gifted. So if I didn't know you, sorry, I couldn't give them to you. um, but I ended up making a business out of it 2 years ago. And it was okay to do that for myself, but I also wasn't really making enough to survive on. There'd be flushes and influxes of income, but it wasn't enough. And then I finally got a real job. I'm really adulting now and I'm really happy. This is me all the time now. And I just realized that it was actually 9 months ago, I emailed the government of Alberta to say, I don't need your assistance anymore. That was like one of the bigger changes in my life, that I knew God is really working in my life, right? Creator's really providing. Those promises are coming true. Of course, there's some fears about money. Who isn't worried with the way things are going? But I know for a fact that I'm going to be okay. I'm always going to be provided for as long as I have that faith. And along with that comes with trust. And it certainly has been a trying time, because 2 years ago, I lost the most important person in my life, and that was my mother. She was the rock of our family. She was the matriarch of all of our family back in Wayway-Sikapo. So we knew she was sick. I had to travel to Manitoba. I didn't realize that was going to be the last time I would ever talk to her. So that, of course, is in my step 4. But I also had to bring home her little dog. Her little dog is actually 17. And so in human years, she's almost like 88, 89. It's kind of crazy. So I still have a piece of my mom with me. And my mom was 31 years sober when she passed away. So she sobered up at the same age that I sobered up, which was 47. And it's just been an amazing realization that all of that grief, all of that sadness, all of that pain, all of the hurt that came along with losing the most important person in my life didn't have to impact me the way it had impacted the rest of my siblings, some of the grandchildren. They all turned to drinking and using drugs and shunning family and, inflicting pain. I sought out help. I had a regular therapist, but I also had a grief counselor. And I was able to work between the two and put it together and use those as stepping stones to work through my grief, but also add it to my recovery. How is it helping me grow? And it was really a good decision on not only on my part, but other people's suggestions of, you can't stay stuck in those ways. Because that was my biggest lesson from my mom. She would always say, you can't stay stuck in that place or you'll never grow, right? No matter if it was depression or in an abusive relationship or just in a bad headspace. She'd always say, you can't stay there, my girl. And I just learned a Cree word. It's Akamemuk, and that means keep going. And I'm trying to find the word in my language. So I've spoken to my language teacher. By the way, that's the thing I've done. I'm learning my language, which is Anishinaabe. And I started dancing. I fully committed to dancing 1.5 months after my mom passed away, because a friend of mine said, are you really going to wait a year to heal? Is that really what you want to do? Or do you want to start healing now? There's people in this circle that are going to carry you. And there's people on the outside that are going to be praying for you. And once you walk in that circle, you're bringing your mom in. If this isn't what she gets to do, you do. You do what she doesn't get to. So, yeah, I've been committed to dancing for the last 2 years. I make my own regalia. I get to make my oldest son's regalia because he wants to start dancing. It's like miracles are happening in front of my eyes quicker than I thought. Some seem, what's that word, Bill? Sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. And it's all been about how much I really trust in Creator and the path He set down for me. I may fall down sometimes, I may scrape my knees, but as long as I get back up and I keep going, Akamemok, and so can you. So thank you for listening to my story. And I'll be praying for all of you. Even if I didn't know you before, believe me, I was praying for people who are still suffering, whether they're in recovery or not. So, miigwech.
Awesome, Aud. So just hang tight, Audrey. So yeah, Audrey's journey hasn't been a straight line of, success, although she's used every trip and fall and scrape to her advantage. And her mom's words, like, you got to get up, you got to move, you can't stay stuck, whether it's an abusive relationship, whether it's drinking or drugging or, depression or anxiety, the message she got from her mother and the message that she gets through her own Creator today is like, you got to get up and you got to push forward, you got to move. And that's recovery, right? Me being sober and suffering, it becomes a choice. So does anyone have any questions or wanna comment to Audrey on her share? If you do, just unmute your mic and we'll give you a few minutes or a couple seconds to unmute, and if anyone has any questions.
Hi. I just want to say congratulations, because I've been in recovery for 14 years, and I did it through the steps, AA. And just to let you know, with the 14 years of my recovery, with the 12 steps, we do it over and over and over, just to share. Because I know I've done step 4. I went to 4 treatment centers, and I've done the step over and over again. And it depends on the day, because something will always come up throughout the day. And then all of a sudden it'll trigger. And then we're right back where we started. So just to share, just to let you know. And I'm from Fort Chip, by the way. And I'm also at the Basket Chippewa First Nation member. Yeah. So congrats. So proud of yous. We're doing it one step at a time.
Thank you.
God bless.
Amazing, Tanya. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Okay, I have a couple questions for Audrey. And we'll wait to see if anyone else does. Audrey, as you were on this journey of yours, what were vital turning points for you to find recovery, first of all?
I never really thought about what turned it around for me. All I know is I was lonely. I mean, loneliness took me out there to drink, thinking I had people, in my life, when they were just in my life in the bars or the parties. I didn't realize I had kids at home that needed me. I didn't have friends that I truly wanted to spend time with me, just to spend time with me. So I think it was seeing the way my kids would be when I walked out the door, or when they would phone or text and ask when I was coming home. Yeah.
And if you were to give two main gratitude points of your sobriety or the new life that you're walking, what would the two top ones be?
Definitely getting back to my roots. We as Indigenous people were never meant to have alcohol in our lives. So being able to connect back to not only my homelands, which is what's been going on, especially the last 2 years, I've been able to connect with family members, my cousins that I grew up with, my mom's nieces that she raised. They're my aunties. We have all become closer. They wonder, are you coming back this year for the powwow, or are you able to come visit? Or they'll stop in and visit me here in Calgary. So definitely connecting to my roots, to my homelands, and learning my language. I get to do the things that she didn't get to do because of residential school. So yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, last chance for any questions for Miss Audrey Cook. Anybody, any takers? Okay, Aud, thank you. And just mute yourself and shut off your camera and we'll swap
Will
out
do.
speakers. And
Sounds good.
thank you so much.
See you, Tanya.
Next on the list, we have Robbie Daniels. While he gets himself situated in place, I want to touch base on a couple things. Audrey talked about, not sitting in whatever it was. Like for me, I would sit in anger. Anger was a huge thing for me most of my life, and anger turned into violence. And when we talk about drugs and alcohol, and like I'll take something from one of the 12-step fellowships, they talk about being powerless over the drug or the drink. I was powerless over my anger. I was powerless over the violence, that word violence, just violence through words, violence through mind and emotional like manipulation, and then physical violence that, most of my life had encapsulated. But as I worked through my own recovery journey, anger is not a part of my life anymore. And I'm not saying I don't get frustrated. I'm not saying that, things don't bother me. But the powerlessness of anger and how it used to control my life and push people out of my life, it doesn't do that today. Which is a huge reason why I love recovery so much, why I dedicate my life to helping other people. Because if I could change who I was with the help of my creator, I believe anybody can. And, another thing Audrey touched base on was how her path of the steps, Tanya touched on it too. And just, and I know a lot of people aren't interested in the steps and it's a white man's way. And, and many of us think that. And a lot of us who are in 12 steps thought that for many years. But it's a very effective way to connect with our own culture. So for me, I kind of followed that path a little bit too in the beginning years. And I remember when I finally connected with my culture, and I'll go into this a little more when it's my turn. But I remember sitting at the back of the Sundance grounds because I was in Escapio and there was a whole bunch of us Escapios back there and we didn't know each other. And about 3 days into being in Escapio, we had built some camaraderie and we were all talking and there must have been 12 or 14 of us helpers back there. And what became revealed was that every single one of the Escapios at the back of that Sundance had got their start and found their culture through a 12-step program. And a lot of these men had, over the years, just switched and just their foundation was culture, which is totally great. And some of the guys, it was still 12 steps and culture. So it's just a little bit of data that I've always found very interesting. 100% of the men in our Escapio group in the Sundance that I'm a part of found their culture through a 12-step program. And I've seen that numerous times over the years as I've helped a lot of different people. So here's one guy who he got his first start in sobriety, and he'll tell you the story better than I will. Many years on the streets, dishonoring his own self numerous times over his life, from Stony, not far from Calgary. And he did a set of Wellbriety steps, and that connected him to the drum, connected him to culture. And so Robbie primarily uses culture for his recovery today. And I'm going to let him tell his story. He's a beautiful human being. Robbie, get ready, unmute and camera yourself. And he's just a beautiful man who dedicates his life to helping other First Nations people. And I'm honored to call him a friend. And we do a lot of things together today. And I thought he'd be a great pick for us to listen to today, since he came from, straight from the res right to downtown Calgary. And now he works for his creator. Anyway, take it away, Robbie. Thank you. Hi.
Hello, I'm about Stitch. Good day. Well, my name is Robbie Daniels. I'm from Morley, Alberta. I just turned 45 last month. I'm a grateful recovering addict. I struggled with addiction for going on 27 years. I think it's, and I really had a hard time recovering. But almost 6 years ago, it's funny, because I think Bill was sobered up around in March too. But I sobered up around March 6 year. In March would be 6 year. And I've struggled. I've tried different ways. I've tried to recover a few times, but I've never included my higher power. Which and later on I failed. I didn't. I tried to sober up. I didn't. I didn't pray. I didn't. Get up early like I do now and pray in the morning. And I didn't pray for my food. Pray for others like I do now. And by the end of the day, give thanks for the day. A way of life. That the way I live right now. I have to live that way of life in order for my recovery to be solid. It's culture is like Bill said, saved my life. Growing up, I've grown up with my mom with Jesus pictures on the wall, and more my mom was more, my family was kind of like, even my community was more assimilated into the Christian. And but almost 6 years ago, when I started to recover, I was struggling on the streets. My mom passed away in 2016, and she was trying her best to help me to recover. She brought me to some sweats. She brought me to a sweat. She was struggling with cancer, and no, and she. Oh, no, she passed away in 2016, and it really hit us hard, because she was the backbone of our family, and she was everything to us, because we had a tiny family. Me, I'm the youngest, and my brother in the middle, and my sister, the oldest. So we were a small family, and my mom passed away. We all took it hard, and we all used more. Me and my brother, he has never been on the street, and he ended up going on the street when we all went when my mom passed away, we all went to the streets and used more, you know, and it was a tough time for us, it was a dark time, being on the street and, I was I got really addicted to crystal meth and, that drug is very, has some very dark spirit in it, like that, I really had a hard time. I really enjoyed that drug, I had a hard time recovering from it. Um, but I've did some things that I've won't normally do, which was, dumpster diving, you know, and going in alleys and those bins, trying to find things to sell and to get high with, and because my mom, she raised us the best she could. She was my dad was an alcoholic. He was one he beats up my mom, and my mom took us away from my dad, and when I was about 5 years old, we moved to Morley, and then eventually my dad followed us, and and scared the shit out of us, trying to beat up me and my brother, stuff like that. I know a lot of people of our people struggle with that, and a lot of our people have single parents, a lot of our and you know we've I was raised by my mom, a woman, and I was thinking about that today, and like the masculine part where my dad's supposed to teach me, I lack on that, and which was hard for me to in my life, because the importance of having both families, both parents is very important. Now that I realize, that in my life I had a hard time, and which made me make poor choices in my life. You know, I was I was the youngest, and my mom babied me a lot. And baby, very babied most. I mean, all of us say, she did everything. She paid for rent. When we lived in the city, she paid for food. She cleaned up, did everything. But over 30, we were very dependent on our mom, And but when she passed away, couldn't even take care of ourselves, And so we ended up going on the street, poor me crying around and stuff. And you know, being on crystal meth, that when you come off crystal meth, the depression is very like high, 10 times higher, maybe more. When I'm on the street crying for my mom, I just lost my mom and did a lot of emotional damage, and later on I developed psychosis, because I was staying up for for 13 days, and I sleep for an hour, and I stayed up for another 13 days, and that was the life I was living, no food, hardly any food, and which caused physical problems and mental health. And I was very shameful, the way I felt, it's just an ugly feeling the way I felt, you know, and You know, I was one of those people that, like was I was always thinking people were after me, always thinking people were gonna kill me. I thought everybody was a narc, and I hid. The last bit of my street life, I was by myself. I was very lonely. Nobody wanted to hang out with me. Because I struggled with psychosis, flailing, and stuff like that, and just and and then I just added, I was I didn't even go to the homeless shelters because I didn't want to be seen at the homeless shelters. I was too proud, so stayed up at Tim Hortons, and McDonald's 24 hours restaurants, and I even at one point they even had a tent in parks, and yeah, that time I wanted to, like I said, I wanted to be alone all the time, and I went to the park to get high, and I didn't come out till 2 weeks later because I met somebody there, and he gave me a tent, and so I stayed in that tent and got high, and I seen some very uh dark stuff in the park, and especially being on drugs, you hallucinate, eh? Every time I try to come out of the park, I was at the edge of the park, and I could see people way across there's a river there way across, and I could see them turning their head, and they're saying, "Hey, look, there's Robbie," the stuff like that. Even though that's not true, but in my mind, I believed it. So mental health. So I stayed in that park 2 weeks until I got really hungry. And yeah, and that's the time I had to get out, and I actually got on a bike and just bolted out of there and ran. And a lot of uh, stories like that, like I have, you know. The last bit was, like I said, I was staying up for days, and I kept seeing the sun come up, eh? And this one time it was really early, and the sun was coming up, and I was on top of a ramp, and I picked up, there's a cigarette button, I picked that up, and I started crying, well, come on, help me. I cried. People walking by me, I didn't care, I just cried hard. And then soon after, like I started to have that courage, strength to do something for myself. So I kept going to these shelters and trying to ask for help, and eventually, I got into detox. And then since I got into detox, I connected with the elder there, and he gave me a smudge bowl and some smudge, and that's where I started, praying hard. And I started to have circles there. This was at the detox where there was a circle every morning. I would start to smudge people, and back then I didn't know what I was doing, but I just went with the flow. People wanted to smudge too, so I smudged them. I prayed for them, and you know, and then it just took off like that, and they offered, I'm grateful they offered sweat lodges there, and twice a week. So I took advantage of that. the meetings they had and they had men's drum circle that, you know, even after I left the treatment, the detox, and I went to treatment, I still kept going to that drum circle, men's drum circle. That's where I developed a passion to start singing. They they uh they selected some people, just a few people, to make a drum, and it was a drum workshop, and I went and made my first drum ever. They taught me how to make my drum. Afterwards, I started to teach myself some songs, and at this time, you know, I was in sober living place, and I had some friends that they were also in recovery, and we were going, you know, regularly to meetings and stuff like that, and you know, I started to, what I learned, the songs, I started to teach my friends. And then when I taught, and then we learned them well enough, we went on the street and started to sing for the homeless people. And we were starting to get noticed and stuff like that. And but yeah, and what I'm saying is, you know, culture, you know, really opened my, you know, my mind, changed my way of thinking, you know, and you know, it really helped me in my recovery, you know. And you know, I have Sundance. I'm in my 5th year of Sundance, and the doctor, one, you know, in my beginning of my recovery, and I got diagnosed with drug induced because of my drug use. And you know, I've had a hard time with it, you know, with even speaking or holding on a conversation. And for the first year, and I felt that psychosis feeling for the whole year, and I didn't think it was ever gonna go away. But I kept going to these ceremonies, and you know, Sundance. I even fasted in the mountains twice for 4 days and 4 nights, and you know, something about our culture, there's very powerful, you know, starving myself, you know, and rebooting my, you know, whatever was damaged in me, you know, was rebooting itself, you know. And I really believed in the culture. I really wanted to get better, you know. The way I felt was very ugly because of my drug use. It was uh, very tough, you know, living with mental health. But in deep down, you know I can get better, you know, through culture. You know, I really believe in culture now, you know, and in the way I live today is, you know, like I said, you know, I have to live this way of life in order for my recovery to be solid. You know, I have to do my offerings, you know, in the morning, offer tobacco, you know, smudge, you know, and also smudge for others. And you know, I went back home before I was jumping around places, up, you know, places to go for ceremony everywhere and where I can. Until one elder told me, you know, go to your people. So that's what I did. I went home, and I went home. I went to an elder and I cried to him and asked him for help. And and you know, he's been so that's where I've been going to get some help. And you know, my life has been very interesting. For my recovery has been very interesting, you know, and like, and a lot of good things and a lot of impossible things that have happened, you know, like that Creator made it happen, he was with me, But I just had to meet him halfway, I had to do my part, My part was to go get some help. My part was to go to meetings, to seek an elder, and my part was to go to a ceremony and stuff, and the Creator, met me halfway. And I'm grateful, you know, this the life that I struggle with, and I'm able to use it in a good way to help other people, especially people that are struggling with mental health. A lot of people nowadays they struggle with mental health. Like so many, that's just it's very sad out there. I work at the Alpha House Detox Center where I was at it. I've been where I was, where I started my journey, and I'm able to help, people that are also, struggling with addiction. So I see it a lot, and yeah, it's pretty sad that especially a lot of our men. There's more men out there on the street than when there is women. And our men are struggling with it, homelessness and stuff. And I think it has a lot to do with masculine or being tougher or something. I don't know, but there's our men are struggling out there, and yeah, and so that's where uh, I'm out there, trying to help as much people as I can, to share my story, and but yeah, how culture really saved my life. And like yeah, I like I said, I developed a passion to sing, and that's what kept me sober, and singing in ceremonies and stuff like that. And but uh but yeah, uh what else? But yeah, I'm sometimes it's very, very hard for me to uh, tell my story, but I'm grateful to be here, and I'm happy to share whatever knowledge I have. Being homeless on the street, how culture really helped me and opened my eyes, and the way that my view in life has changed because of culture. And it's like I said, I've tried many times, but it was in front of me this whole time. Our culture is very powerful. And it's just it takes, everybody has a belief system built in them, and then you got to believe that culture is gonna help you. Um, but yeah, I don't know, Bill.
That's good, bro.
Yeah,
That's good.
maybe
I
ask
love,
you some questions, and I can
yeah.
maybe.
Yeah, I love you, bro. I love you. Um, I've known you for your whole recovery run, and I think this is very typical in most people's recovery. Like your first couple years was quite different than like this year, right? Now you're in your sixth year, coming up on 6 years. Excuse me. For anyone out there who's like thinking about recovery and following a new path, what's the biggest difference from like that first or second year to the year that you're in now?
Can you say that again?
What's the biggest difference between your first year and the year that you're in now?
Uh, my way of thinking is different, for sure, definitely. And we're more confident and I feel more at peace as my first year, like I said, I was still struggling with psychosis, that feeling of psychosis feeling.
And
Yeah.
when you, in those early years, when you maybe thought of using again, what did you do to not use?
In my first year,
Yeah.
well, I was really driven, I was very, I don't know, I had so much drive in me that time. I was just every day, Monday to Sunday, I had a meeting to go to, even in ceremonies in between, and always, sticking to people that are also in recovery, and especially living in a sober living house kind of helped me too, because I wanted to, what I wanted to do was go to treatment and then go to get my own place right away. But then, an elder told me, go to the sober living and then transition to your own home. So I didn't want to, but I just went with the flow. I really didn't want to go, and I went to the sober living. But I went with the flow, and then and I've learned a lot, being in those places, having 3 square meals a day, when to wake up, when to come home, where, I used to eat every time I want to come home or go to sleep anytime I want now. I don't go past, I try not to go past midnight, and, even having that clean room and chores and stuff like that, where, like I said, my mom did everything. Even cleaning and stuff like that. And that's where I learned that those sober living places, you know.
So you bring up a real good point. A lot of people will go to treatment and get a little bit of help at treatment, and then they feel good and they feel better, so they think they are better, and then they go back home to the same environment, and then it's not long, and then they relapse. That's just something that I've seen over and over and over. Go to treatment, feel better, think I'm better, go back to the res or go back to my old environment, and then relapse. And then once the relapse kicks off, then there's no telling how long it's going to be till the person gets another chance at willingness to try to recover, which is not always the case even. So, can you speak to how important it was to listen to other people along your journey? Because your best thinking kept getting you drunk and high, right? It's
Yeah,
important to it's important to listen to other people and really be in an environment where other people are doing this. Hey?
yeah, yeah. For sure, like it's, when I seen a lot, especially people, they've been to treatment, and when I'm on the street, I see people that have been to treatment and they come back and they say, "Well, what are you doing here?" I seen them, with the homeless people. So, oh, I just come here to see my people, these are my people. I'm sober, I'm not, I got this much sober time. I'm okay. And a few days later, I see them, drunk and, getting hauled in or at the homeless shelter. But it's very important, and for me, I stayed away from, these people I'm talking about. I know, I used to use with them, I used to drink with them, everything, but I stayed away until I got really healthy, And I started to work at the homeless shelter a year into my recovery. I was still, not solid, but I'm grateful that I'm able you know, I'm still here sober because, you know, I seen it every I work and you know, I see drugs, you know, people using, I see pipes, and it was tough for me that time, eh? And I always had to remind myself where it got me, eh? And you know, I didn't want to feel that shame that I felt because it was so shameful the way I felt that I would never want to feel that way again. And but yeah, it was just pretty, you know, first year of my recovery working in a homeless shelter where a lot of drugs and stuff like that go on. There's pretty challenging for me, but you know, I kept going to ceremonies between, you know, going to meetings, having a circle where friends were also in recovery, you know, we help each other, and that helped a lot, eh? Especially service work, you know, and like helping other people, you know, when you, especially, you know, the way I look at it is, you know, when I help another someone on the street, I also give myself life, eh? Even that, I never used to think that way, eh? You know, my view and things is different, you know. And that's just
Beautiful.
because of culture. Culture really helped me a lot.
Beautiful, bro. So we're gonna ask the gallery if anyone has a question for Robbie. Does anyone online have a question for Robbie? If you do, please unmic yourself or unmute yourself and ask away. We'll give you you know, a little bit of time to unmute. Okay, looks like we don't have any takers, and that's totally fine. We will have an opportunity at the end for some questions if anyone comes up with any in between now and then. We are running a little bit of overtime, which is, you know, we're on creators time here. And I think where really the creator time thing goes, you know, a lot of people say, oh, you're on Indian time, which means you're always late. No, really what it means is things take as long as they take. And, you know, this is going to take as long as it takes. And we can't just pull the pin on things just to keep in alignment with time, I don't think. And, you know, through my whole building of my business, I've really ran with that attitude. Things take what they take. So, Robbie, thank you very much. We are going to get Robbie back in a little bit here to do a song for us. And but for now, we're going to keep moving along. So, Robbie, if you could mute and shut off your camera, and thank you very much. And we'll talk to you in the gallery here. Okay, next up, we are going to go to Roberta and Lucy. At first, when I was conceptualizing this event, I was going to get them sing together because I've heard them sing together, and it's just a very beautiful, oh, I can't even put it into words. It's like godlike with these two women as they sing together. But because there's a delay on Zoom, changing it up, and I'm going to get Roberta to share a little bit of her recovery journey, just like what it's like, and, you know, new in recovery and a young woman in recovery, and, you know, and then kind of segue into the meaning, a little bit of talking about the song, and then she'll finish off her little segment with a song. And then once Roberta's done, we'll switch over to Lucy, and then we'll keep carrying on. So Roberta is up near Edmonton right now. I met her through my Sundance family. Took me a while to get to know her, but you know, as you watch people, you can see and you can feel a different vibration, or you can feel their vibration. And you know, she just was always full of light, and she was always helpful, and she was always doing the things that needed to be done for the family. And, you know, her partner is a friend of mine in Sundance who I've built this relationship with. And, you know, Roberta's just doing so many amazing things and carrying her own message of recovery in her own way, as I'm a Facebook friend of hers. And, you know, we're still getting to know each other. But when I was praying on this event, she came to my mind really strongly. And so I reached out to her, and she said she would love to be a part of this. So, Roberta, take it away, girl.
Hi. Thank you. Thank you, Bill, for inviting me to your event here. I really loved hearing everybody share so far. Robbie, you have an amazing story. Same with Audrey and yeah, those who are going to be sharing as well. And your father, thank you for the beautiful prayer and your story as well. I commend all of you and all the amazing work you're doing. Um, so hawan ito tamak yata miska tenawa kakiao, Roberta Alook nitzigasun, Wabaska Alberta otsiniao otsinutao ipan, Dylan Saskatchewan otsiniao otsinagao ipan, Nia sagao neheo squeo egodene sunkline. I said to you in my language, hello, my friends. I shake hands with you all. My name is Roberta. I'm from Wabaska on my late dad's side and Dylan on my late mom's side. I'm both Woodlands Cree and Dene Sunkline. And yeah, I'm going to be singing a song for you guys today. Um, I decided on a song. I wasn't sure which one to do, but just hearing everybody talk, there's a song that's on my heart. And I am going to be singing the song tomorrow in a lodge at the school that I work with. There's a youth there who is FMMI. They had taken their life about 2 weeks ago. So we're holding a lodge for that youth tomorrow. And I'm going to sing this song for the youth that are going to be there and for that youth that I also worked with. And it's a prayer song. I'll explain it more after, and then I'll sing it for you guys. And just a little bit about me. I'm 7 years sober now. I struggled really lots in the past at a young age. I was a full-blown addict. I had a major depressive disorder. I was suicidal, and I didn't care what happened to me. I was kind of on a frenzy at the last of my using. And and yeah, I had a similar situation to Robbie. One day I couldn't take it anymore. I was at the end of my rope and I burned all my bridges. I was in a city that I didn't know and I didn't know anybody in that city or where to go to or who to turn to. And I was sitting at a library trying to get on a computer to try and figure out what to do with myself. And I was looking out a window, watching normal people walking by. The snow was falling. These people were just walking by like they looked like they had a job to go to or they're gonna go home. Or looked like they just had something going on with them and I didn't understand why that couldn't be me. And I was so devastated where it finally hits you like the life that I was living and where I ended up. And I never thought I'll end up there. And I was so broken and devastated. And I literally begged God. I was crying and I was begging God to please help me. And the very next day, I ended up in my first AA meeting. I didn't even know what AA was. That's how like oblivious I was. But I didn't even know what AA was. And when I got to that AA meeting, here it was a roundup and there's all these elders sharing their stories. And I remember sitting right at the front there and listening to these stories. And I don't know, I felt like God heard me and he helped me. My late mom too was a really godly woman. I feel like everyone's talking about their mom right now, and that makes me really happy. Me and my mom were close too. She treated all her kids like babies. So I grew up with that too. She was a solid Dene woman, really godly. And in my early recovery, she taught me 3 prayers. The first one was I asked her to teach me how to say, God, forgive me. Sadariye Sanunle. And I said that for 1 year straight till I could finally stay sober. And then I asked her to teach me another prayer, how to stay in the here and now. I wanted my own personal prayer. And my mom told me, Sadariye Mercy Dun Goha. That means thank you, God, for right now. But in our language, it's kind of hard to translate it word for word. It's more than that. Sadariye Mercy Dun Goha. And then later on, she taught me another prayer. Sadariye Mercy Dun Goha. Sekenal ni Hatari Asien Lakanunea. Sequoia, Siki, Koene, Ama, Nohoithni. That means, God, thank you for right now. I'm putting everything in your hands, my siblings, my family, my parents, my mom. Watch over it. And that prayer I said with her the night before she passed away. The next day I held her in my arms while she took her last breath. And although it's sad, it broke my heart. This was 2 years ago. I was already in recovery and I already had a community around me and ceremony to lean on. So I didn't fall apart, but I look back at it and the greatest gift that gave my mom was her passing away knowing I was okay. And she used to pray for me when I finally came home. I would sleep for weeks. I slept for 4 weeks and sometimes I'll wake up and my mom was praying over me in Dene. So I really love her. I love everything she taught me and just loving life, loving sobriety, loving our culture, loving that there's this event happening and I'm assuming it's all native people. So you guys are doing good, really amazing. When I needed you, you guys were here for me and that's kind of what I do now. I do a lot of community work. I'm in university finishing a combined degree Native Studies education. I'm a Cree language instructor, a art teacher. I work with grades 10, 11, and 12 with our youth. And I do lots of community work like cultural workshops, language workshops, volunteering. I offer my songs a lot to Henwood Treatment Center with you guys now. All over the place, I'm just everywhere. But it's good. Don't isolate yourself. Get out there. There's these kind of things happening all the time and it's good to be a part of it. And so the song I'm gonna sing for you, I learned it this year. It's a Lakota song. The lodge I go to, they're taught by Dakota and Lakota people. So it's a Lakota song. The words in it are Ate, that means I pray, I'm praying, Ate. The next word is Wahuelo, that means hear me or listen to me. And then the next word is Chanupawa. I'm sitting here with my pipe praying. Can you hear me? Or you're sitting there with your tobacco and you're praying. So I guess I'll just get into it. Ate, ate, Waoeloe, ate, ate, Waoelo, Waoeloe, Chanupawa, Yoha, Waoeloe, Ate, Ate, Waoelo, Waoeloe, Ate, Ate, Waoeloe, Ate, Ate, Waoelo, Waoeloe, Chanumpawa, Yoha, Waoeloe, Ate, Merci trop.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you, Roberta. Just a couple questions for you before you go. What was the hardest part about finding a path to recovery?
I think in the beginning, I didn't realize that the amount of things that I had to let go of. I literally had to let go of all my friends, everything, my thinking, my whole surroundings, who was around me, who I wanted to be around, and not knowing who to be around, like the type of good people that I should be around. And I had to let go of everything. I had to change every single thing at the beginning. And that took a while. Like I didn't sober up right away. Took like 9 months, I think, till I finally just um stuck to myself and started going to meetings and not participating with my old friends and stuff like that.
Is it safe to say that you had to start maybe listening to somebody else's direction for the first while and not your own?
Yeah. Yeah, I was really, really shy in early recovery, especially going to the meetings. So I never talked, never talked for like 1 year, and now I do public speaking and everything. But in that first year, I'll really tune into what the old timers were saying, and I'll watch the way they were acting and what they were talking about and the recommendations they were giving because I didn't have no answers and I was so humbled coming into the rooms. Like I needed to hear those old timers and um being willing to, so like really listening to what they were saying. And a lot of them were native people here in Edmonton. I tuned into what they were saying, and others too were really good with Alcoholics Anonymous, like the big book, and some women too. There's lots of women that I eventually buddied up with. Yeah.
And I didn't know that you got your start in 12-step fellowship, so that's very interesting. And I guess the last thing that I'll ask you is when we talk about like the environment, you kind of alluded to it already. The environment that you put yourself in those early years is very important. Hey?
Mhm. Yeah, it's very,
Um,
very important.
Yeah, give our maybe newcomers who are listening or people that are thinking about going into that path, like give them a final message of like what it takes. And part of your journey, I'm sure, I don't know, but I'm sure it's been hard, right? And
Mhm.
give them a little taste of what to expect, maybe starting and then as the years go on to today, it's simpler, right? It's a lot easier today, but it wasn't always that way, right?
Yeah, it wasn't always this way. Um, well, when I look at the program of AA, they say 1 day at a time. That didn't dawn on me at first. I could never fathom being sober for the rest of my life. So I leaned on that, but instead of just saying 1 day at a time, I asked my mom to teach me that prayer, Sadare Mercy Dun Goha, and that was my anchor. So if you're connected to your family who speak a language, maybe you can talk to them to have a prayer for yourself that will ground you till you can continue moving forward. And yeah, sometimes we don't realize it or we're not aware of it. Um, like me and Robbie, we both prayed, and I'm sure a lot of people did. Like, with hitting rock bottoms, come into a realization that I needed help, and I prayed, and I didn't even know if anything was listening. And literally the next day, I ended up at my first AA meeting and leaning on that higher power, my creator, really helped me through every single thing since that day. Like I get so full of anxiety or things happening like when I lost my mom or other things that were happening too. I couldn't rely on myself because being an alcoholic, I already have an alcoholic mindset. And I didn't trust myself, but I knew that I can trust Creator and God to pull me out of it or to get me through it. And so I did that unknowingly, having a little bit of faith that things were gonna be okay, and I was taken care of. Sorry, my dogs are fighting. And and then one more thing too. I always tell this to my siblings because they're coming. My older sister is coming off the streets now for the past year, solid year. She just celebrated 1 year sobriety, and I tell them all the time, if you have a question, us humans, we can only go so far to try and help ourselves or to try and help each other. It's good to bring tobacco and put it down on the ground and ask for help because we have helpers that are around us all the time, and our loved ones that passed on, they're standing there willing to help, and so is Creator. So if you're struggling and you don't know who to turn to or you're too nervous to turn to somebody, just grab some tobacco and put it down and tell them that you need a little bit of help.
Hi. Well, Roberta, thank you very much for donating some of your time to such a good cause and sharing your experience and your path towards the culture. And, look forward to getting to know you more and seeing what life has for you. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
coming.
Oh, one quick thing, real sorry. I do
Yeah.
have to log out in 20 minutes because I gotta go to work right away. But thank you
That's okay.
guys for everything. Yeah.
Hi. Okay. Next, we have somebody that's really close to me. Lucy, if you could open your camera on mic. So Lucy I got a bit of a bias to Lucy. She's my daughter. And she is 23 years old. She's had her struggles with substance abuse, and sometimes she's wondered, am I even an addict? Am I an alcoholic? She hasn't, figured out all the things that she needs to figure out. But you know what? She has found a path towards culture. She is sober for a good little bit of time now, and she is just finding her way, like so many of our young people are still looking to find their way. And Lucy is going to be just fine. And why I know that, because she puts Creator first. So Lucy, if you could, kind of share a little bit and intro your song and then sing your song.
Okay. Hello, I'm Lucy. Yeah, no, it's still a little bit hard for me to actually say if yes or no I am an addict. I didn't really get to decide that for myself, as we all don't. But I was told from when I was in middle school up until I was about 19 that I was an addict alcoholic without a sip of liquor or a line yet. And that really, just that constant pressure letting me know that you are an addict, even though I don't know if I was or not. I was raised by two addicts. My mom doesn't have any addiction to substances, but she has all the spiritual maladies, everything that you could classify as an addict. She is, just without the substance. And so I was already raised by reaching outside of myself to search for gratification and instant gratification, and it was just the way I lived. And so then once my dad had gotten into this way of life, it had just changed so much, and I was like, what is going on? I'm like, you're tripping. And so I got real angry for quite some time. And I didn't know if I was going to share this. It was my spiritual awakening, because I was in Catholic school my whole life, and I was like, whatever I'm believing in, it's do or die. So when I was in Catholic school, I believed in all this Catholicism, and I was like, holy shit. Like at the age of 10, I'm having panic attacks because I'm going to be going to hell because I'm not following Catholicism exactly how I'm supposed to be. So then I ended up getting at a breaking point, and I said, no, I'm not doing this. God wouldn't do this to a little girl. And so I just wiped away any sort of higher power. And I would say I was an atheist, but still deep down knowing I had a belief in the universe or something like that. So then I was really angry, and stuff wasn't going the way I needed it to go, and I was failing in every aspect of life. And I was about 19 or 20 years old at this point. And I was doing a lot of Xanax, but it wasn't, my Xanax had fentanyl in it, and so that's what I really enjoyed, any sort of benzo and fentanyl. And so I was doing my Xanax with fentanyl in it for a couple months with me and my ex-boyfriend, and then I didn't know if my time of the month had come. And I was like, weird, because I was too high to keep track. So then I was telling my mom about that, and she's like, okay, we'll just wait 2 weeks. It's probably coming. Like, it's not a big deal. I wasn't dumb. I was kind of dumb, but like not that way. And then I was screaming at my mom, and then I was screaming at my dad, and I was like, what can you do to help me? Because it felt like everything he always did wasn't helping me. And then he told me to pray to Creator. And at this point, I was like, are you kidding me, dude? Like, I'm not, like, oh my God. But I was at wit's end. And so I prayed to Creator, and nothing happened. So then one night I was screaming at my mom, and I'm like, you can't help me. My dad can't help me. Creator can't even help me. And the next morning, I was on Facebook, believe it or not. And on those little Facebook games, they had a tap to play, and it said, pregnancy is calling you. So I took a pregnancy test, and I was pregnant. And I couldn't believe it. And then I was still so wrapped up in the way of this world that I decided I wouldn't go through with the pregnancy, because that's what we're taught. Like, you have a choice. But if you're following this path and Creator, you don't get that choice. Creator provides what you are supposed to experience. And so after that happened, it broke my little heart. I had never felt so empty and so powerless. And I just realized, like, I can't have this be another thing to keep me down. Like, I'm just going to learn from it. And so ever since then, I thank the little baby that I could have had for bringing me closer to my Creator. And I think it's really, I think it's really important to me now, because 4 years later, on this path, and I've had a couple of relapses, but I've still always stuck to Creator and can feel the presence with me and guiding me. But I am now pregnant again, and it feels like a full circle. And I'm just so grateful to have learned what I've learned, been able to be blessed with another gift and another opportunity to move forward. And so I went to treatment last year. And so I've been sober off of benzos for about a year. And I'm sober off of weed and alcohol for 4 months now. And it's different this time. I don't know what it is, but it's definitely different for me this time, which I'm very grateful for. And I just trust this process with my whole being. Like, it's all or nothing. And so I'm just grateful for all the people I have in my life, and to be able to do this and have these teachings and be surrounded by all these people. And I get told a lot that I have a special little soul. Everyone does. But I'm just grateful I get to share this kind of experience and stuff. And so the song I will be singing I picked up, I never was really taught it, but I picked it up around ceremony, and it was just one that really like attached itself into my heart. And so I'm still learning more about the song. It's a creator song, and it's just a beautiful song. Okay. Oh, shame, Anna, hey. Oh, shame, Anna, hey. Oh, shame, Anna, hey, 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 oh. Oh, ya, te. Wonka, tonka, hey. Oh, shame, Anna, hey, 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 oh. Oh, shame, Anna, hey. Oh, shame, Anna, hey. Oh, shame, Anna, hey, 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 oh. Oh, ya, te. Wonka, tonka, hey. Oh, shame, Anna, hey, 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 oh. Oh, shame, Anna, hey. Oh, shame, Anna, hey. Oh, shame, Anna, hey, 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 oh. Oh, ya, te. Onka, tonka, hey. Oh, shame, Anna, hey, 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 oh. Oh, shame, Anna, hey. Oh, shame, Anna, hey. Oh, shame, Anna, hey, 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 oh. Oh, ya, te. Wonka, tonka, hey. Oh, shame, Anna, hey, 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 oh.
Wow. Beautiful. Thank you, Lucy.
Thank you.
Lucy, being a young woman, young girl in recovery, bouncing around from relapse to relapse and, one opinion to another, and what is from your first time of trying to get sober to now, what's been the biggest difference or the biggest challenge as a young person?
I think really trusting my gut, because the first time I would ignore it every now and then. Whatever my gut was telling me, I'd consider listening to it. But now it's like I either listen to my instincts or I go against Creator. And so now I'm listening to my instincts as much as possible.
Mm. And what's your message for other young people that out there that are out there? And I know you and I have talked, and you said it's a lonely road being in your position, right? Because you're trying to better yourself and follow a different path, and a lot of your peers are doing, the party scene and drinking and living a different life, right? And so for somebody that's maybe trying to find that path that maybe you're on, and that little bit of a lonely walk, do you have any insight for them? Any advice?
Really just trusting in the process. Like if you're vibrating at a higher level, that's what you're going to attract, whether it takes a little bit or not. Because sometimes you can't get gifts, like the gifts as in like higher vibrating people or experiences. You can't get them all instantly. That's what this world trains you to believe, but you got to wait and be patient to get beautiful things that you deserve. So it's just trusting that your people will come to you when it's supposed to be. And that loneliness that you feel, you're supposed to feel that. Like it's a lot like a sweat or a Sundance. Like it's not all happiness. It's a lot of suffering to be able to not suffer maybe at some point. So you just gotta just got to hold on and trust Creator is going to guide you.
Mm. And as far as the culture goes, you've been very invested in your journey with the culture, and your other sisters, you know, Lila and Jillian, not so as invested. What are some of the biggest things that the culture's taught you so far as a young person?
First off, I'd like to state that growing up, I didn't have any culture to hold on to. My mom had a couple pieces here and there, and whatever it was, my soul was drawn to every little piece my mom had around the place, every powwow we went to. And so I just think being around these people is just, I can't even describe it in a way that would do it justice. Like, the culture is teaching me love over everything. It's teaching me love for myself, higher power, everyone. And I don't know, it's just really powerful.
Sundance experience?
What do you mean?
What was your experience with Sundance?
Sundance. It's one of the most beautiful things I've ever gotten to experience. I haven't Sundanced yet, but maybe one day when Creator tells me it's time. But even just getting to watch you and some of our other friends Sundance, it drains my soul, but it also fills it right back up in the same way. Watching you guys suffer for others has just been a surreal experience. Like, you're so connected to everyone, and wow. And this past summer, I got to go to a Sundance on my birthday, and I got to go into a Sundance sweat on my birthday. And so 23 years ago, I came out of the womb, and then 23 years later, I went back into it. And it was just really cool and surreal. Like, it's really powerful. I don't have the words to describe what Sundance can do, but it heals you in ways, even just watching, in ways that you didn't know could happen.
Amazing. Okay, Lucy, thank you for coming on and sharing your story and being so vulnerable, and to all our speakers thus far being so vulnerable. Lucy, if you could mute yourself and shut off your camera, and we'll get our next speaker set up, which is going to be me. After myself, it'll be Shannda. So I'll just kind of segue into myself right now. And my name is Bill Ward, and today I'm a recovery advocate, recovery activist. My prior life, I was a business owner that made a lot of money in business, and prior to that, I was a young alcoholic, and I had been in treatment by the time I was 17 years old. Treatment didn't get me sober, didn't keep me sober. I continued to get out of treatment and use. I did quit drinking at 22 years old on a prayer. Also, like Lucy, I grew up in Catholic school and didn't really want to pray, but I was so desperate at this one point in my life that I did pray, and I asked Creator to allow me not to drink anymore, because by the time I was 22, I was in and out of jail. I had almost killed somebody at a house party and was being charged, and luckily I got off of all those things, and you know, I came out of my adulthood with only 2 convictions on my record, and those was when I was 18. But that didn't mean that it was the end of my alcoholism, I would say, or my spiritual malady, the spiritual sickness. And the topic of my talk today is the spiritual malady, and I'm going to use my story a little bit. So part of my journey is I'm Indigenous. You can see I'm very brown skinned. I'm half white actually and half Cree, but I took the full look of Indigenous, and my whole life I've been targeted, I guess you could say is a good word. In that Catholic school, I went to school and there was no other Indigenous people. I grew up in a community in Calgary I was never on the reserve, and I was a target for a lot of prejudice. And I was a target at myself for a lot of the prejudice that I didn't even understand till way later. Being Indigenous in the world that I grew up, I had to fight a lot. I grew up with violence, and I had to defend myself numerous times over my life because of the color of my skin, which made me tough. I was tough as nails, and it became a huge part of my identity. I didn't like fighting. I didn't want to fight. I tried to not fight, but I had to fight, and it did become a huge part of my identity, and it fueled my anger. But a lot of like my anger stemmed from when I was really young. I didn't have my dad around when I was growing up. He raised me a little bit, but he was an addict and alcoholic, my dad. And he gave me to my grandmother on my mom's side, and my mom, I don't know where she was. Every little kid needs love, and they need compassion from their parents and nurturing. And in some respects I got it the best that they could give it to me, but I didn't get what I needed as a young man, a young boy. And I started becoming very resentful and aggressive and angry from a very young age. And I'm talking like kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2. And my mom was kind of looking around, trying to figure out her life. And eventually she figured it out and asked if she could have me and my brother back. I got a younger brother who's 1 year younger. And so my grandmother, her mom, gave us back to my mom. And then we grew up in Calgary from there. She bounced around to some alcoholic boyfriends, and the one that she loved the most, he ended up killing himself, and he was a full-blown alcoholic, and he would beat my mom, and me and my brother would see the remnants of this in the mornings on the weekend. And my mom coming down the stairs with a black eye and bruises and things like that. And and she never would leave him. And me and my brother would always like get mad at her and say like, leave him. But we're only in grade 2 and 3 at this point, and my mom's going to do what she's going to do, and she would never leave him. And then one afternoon we came home from school, and our whole family was there, and we walk in the house, and my mom's in the middle of the floor sobbing and crying, and my grandmother and my aunties came and grabbed me and my brother and let us know that Ken was his name, and he had hung himself. And Ken was a raging alcoholic. The thing with being an alcoholic or an addict and you not understanding what's wrong with you, and Ken did not understand what was wrong with him. He had a medication for his spiritual sickness, and it was called alcohol. Eventually, the medication that we use for our spiritual malady quits working. So for me, when I was young and I finally quit at 22, I had a spiritual sickness that I was medicating with alcohol, but then it quit working. With Ken, he also had the same thing, but it quit working for him. But he had a mind that needed the relief so bad that he couldn't not drink. He had to drink, but he couldn't drink. So you get to this place where the only real good solution in many respects for this malady is suicide. And if you look across our nations, you see suicide as an epidemic. Like I live here in Calgary and I work for Tsuut'ina Nation. Tsuut'ina is like right outside of Calgary. And, there was suicide after suicide going on for a long time. And a lot of these deaths, they never get reported, right? And a lot of our nation's issues, especially with the deaths of like drugs and suicide, they don't make the news. It's just part of life for us. And I think part of the goal of these summits is to try to stop those things from happening, right? Try to bring awareness to what recovery is, not just sobriety. What is the spiritual malady? How can we identify it? How can we combat it? Because the spiritual malady is responsible for all self-destructive behavior. And the spiritual malady really is a discontentment within myself. It's a deep longing that nothing's ever going to change, or it's a deep longing that, I'm a bad person, and a lot of guilt and shame. It's just such a debilitating thing. My dad speaks often on, the disease of alcoholism. And it is a dis-ease. It's a dis-ease of my spirit. My dis-ease needs ease. And the ease that I get is alcohol or drugs. But eventually the alcohol or the drugs doesn't work anymore. So when I was 15 years old on my journey, I remember I was kind of hitting puberty and things were kind of changing in my body and whatnot. And I got to this point in my life and I'm like, what's the point of life anyway? Like, I'm 15 years old. I don't really feel like life's really that easy. Yeah, I got some friends and things seem like okay-ish, but there was still a deep things aren't okay feeling in me. And a lot of our teenagers and youth have this, right? And girl suicide was at an all-time high over the years here, and young male suicide also. And substance abuse is up with our young people, boys and girls. So this malady is there, and our youth are seeking medication for it. And so when I was 15 years old and I was like, what's the point of life anyway? I found drugs and I found alcohol. And it allowed me to start living, I guess you could say. It gave me a new zest for life. And it kind of solved some of my problems, that anxious feeling and that, you know, restlessness that I had. And, I brought a host of friends around me because, we had the same thing in common. We were all partying. And then I got into the weed, into the other drugs. And, it worked pretty good for a while there. And it was a lot of fun. And I liked that effect that drugs and alcohol was producing. But then later, when I'm like older, I'm like 18 and 19, drugs and alcohol are causing me a whole bunch of problems. They're not really my best friend anymore, but I'm developing like a serious addiction to these drugs and alcohol because they give me something. But I'm in and out of jail and things are like, not always good. But I'm kind of looking for the old experience that I had when I was younger, when it did give me a sense of connection and it did give me a sense of fun and euphoria. But it's not doing quite the same thing at 18 and 19, but I still like it. And then by the time I hit 22, when I had tried to quit numerous times, and I'm almost going to go to jail for almost killing a guy, I'm like, I gotta stop. The problem is I couldn't stop. I didn't know how to stop. But I did. I prayed one night after I woke up in a place I never should have, woken up in, and I begged Creator or God at that time to allow me not to drink. But then I realized, I'm 6 months sober after I quit drinking, and I'm miserable. And I really had thoughts of suicide at 22, 23 years old. And it's not like I was a suicidal thinking kind of guy, but the thought at least came to mind. And I thought that was very strange. But as I look back at it today, knowing what I know about the malady and addiction, of course I'd have that because I had no medicine for my spiritual sickness. But then what did I do? I looked around the world and I looked at, how can I be happy? That's all I cared about. I just wanted to be happy and I wanted to be okay. And I looked around the world and the billboards told me this and the TVs told me this and social media was just coming out and it was telling me this. The magazines told me this, that you know what, if you have money, you're going to be okay. You're going to be happy. You get this house, you find that wife, and you get this job, and you do these things, and you make some money, and, you kind of work this out to the end of your life, and life's going to be pretty good. And so that's what I did, because That's what I saw. That's what I heard. That's what I knew from my experience in life and what I'd seen. And they were prepping me for this in school and the whole nines, right? So I did that. I started a business, and my untreated alcoholism or addiction now just turned into workaholism and other things like pornography. And I wasn't a big gambler, but oftentimes people go gambling. But my dis-ease is now being medicated by workaholism and buying things and getting validation. And the reality is I still wasn't happy, and I still wasn't able to not be aggressive and angry and violent. Through the 15 years that I built that company, my family, I have Shannon was my wife, common law wife, who I loved and adored. And we had Lila and Lucy and Jillian, and they walked on eggshells around me. All I did was work 15 hours a day. I didn't take days off, and my family suffered a lot of my untreated spiritual disease because I was still very controlling and aggressive and manipulative and wanted things my way, and they had to walk on eggshells. And if I didn't like something, it wasn't going to go that way. And so I was very sick, but I didn't know I was. And I didn't know this till later, but my dad, who you met to start the session with the opening prayer and statements, he was doing counseling with my wife and my family to kind of let them know, like, your husband and your dad, he's really not well. He's what they call a dry drunk. He's not drinking, but he's not emotionally sober. And he may never become emotionally sober, because I just thought being sober was all that needed to be done. And the reality is I wasn't sober because I was still smoking weed. And I was still doing mushrooms here and there, and I would still drop the odd hit of acid. So I wasn't sober, but I thought I was sober. So my dad was doing, ground control, trying to educate my family that I was still a dry drunk and wasn't well. And a dry drunk symptoms is of the spiritual malady. I was still restless. I was still irritable. I was still discontent. I was still angry, still acting out in other behaviors. And eventually my solution of workaholism and money and status, it quit working too. So I need a new solution. I found crack cocaine, 36 years old. And at first it did everything I needed it to do. Took away all the feelings. It made me feel great. It did all the things that it promised to do. And then it took my soul. Then it took my family. Then it took my business. Then it took everything away from me. And I was left with nothing. And I started my journey of recovery. My first step was a place I never wanted to go. I never wanted to go to 12-step recovery. But I was so desperate that I asked my dad, "Can you take me?" And he said, "Son, I'd been waiting 30 years for you to ask me that question." And he took me to my first meeting. And I didn't want to be at a meeting. I didn't think any of this would work. You know what? Turns out I'm coming up on 10 years sober because something worked, because I was beaten enough to open my mind to try something different. But what I've learned along the journey of my own sobriety, my own recovery, is me removing the drugs and the alcohol is the smartest part of my recovery. It's not the smartest, the smallest. My drink and drug is a symptom of my untreated spiritual disease. And once I remove the drink and the drug, it's going to get rough because I don't have my medication. And I didn't have it, and it was rough. And then my anger amplified itself. My bad sex conduct amplified itself. All these things amplified themselves more because I didn't have a solution. But as I started building a relationship with my creator, because I really believe for the real deal alcoholic and addict, which I am, the only solution, as you've heard today from every single speaker that's been on here, the main thing of their life is their relationship with something greater than themselves, a higher power, God, creator. That is the solution for us. And maybe it's a different solution for a heavy drinker or a moderate drinker. That's fine, but that's not what I am. I'm a real deal low bottom alcoholic and addict. And I will destroy my life and yours too along that journey. And I need something to help me. And so as I looked in my early years of my recovery when I was still real angry, I found out that my anger was always a symptom of my deep sadness. Anger's always a symptom of sadness. So anger management, I took anger management. Yeah, it did help me. It gave me a few tools to kind of regulate it, but it didn't go away. I had to look within myself and see what made me sad. What parts of myself was I dishonoring? Every time I beat somebody up along my journey of life to try to protect myself, you know what I did? I went against the loving core value part of who I am. There's a thing in me called love, called creator, that's based in love and kindness and compassion, that's there to guide my life. You heard my daughter Lucy talk about it. And every time I disrespect you and dishonor you, I disrespect and dishonor myself. I didn't know that though, because I could go to anybody in the world of this material that we live in and I could say, hey, this is what I did and that's what they did to me. And they'll say, that's what I would have done. Good on you for beating him up or whatever it was. Or saying F you or, calling your wife down. I'm always going to find somebody to validate my bad behavior. Why? Because everybody's doing it. But really, when I peeled back the layers of, do I really want to be like this? I never wanted to be like that. So I had to tell myself lies every day so I could live with myself because I had to live with myself. And when I looked at my relationship with my wife and how I thought I was like the top of the food chain and how I would treat her and how I would treat my kids. And, a lot of it was based in male belief systems that I'm the provider. You kind of listen to me and I bring in the bacon. And so you guys should kind of just conform to the way that dad wants our family to be. And what I realized that was just a belief system based in power and control that wasn't right. But I learned about that system in this my journey of life. And once I peeled back that belief system and looked at that too, I was like, this isn't right. This isn't who I want to be. I don't want my kids to be walking on eggshells. I don't want them to be scared of me. But the reality is I didn't know how to not be angry. Well, how I learned how to not be angry is basically, it's kind of like anyone that comes to the summit, they're coming here to maybe learn something. What I've realized is this journey of recovery isn't about really learning anything. It's about unlearning everything. And everything along my journey of life has been placed in there, and my ego has used it to try to protect me. So every time I was angry or I was resentful or I was controlling, I'm trying to protect myself. But really what I'm doing is I'm squishing myself and I'm boxing myself in, which is why my anger needs to come out because it's so condensed inside of me. And that's what makes me restless and irritable and discontent. And that's what makes me need to reach for a drink. And if I don't get something to medicate that, I'm going to lose my mind or I'm going to blow my brains out. So the spiritual malady is serious business. And as I've been working in this field now for many years, we've worked with 300 or 400 addicts, alcoholics, one-on-one, probably got 25,000 hours of time in getting to know how our minds worked. Roberta said an alcoholic mind. An alcoholic addict has an alcoholic addict mind. It's much different than a regular person's mind. And once the addict and alcoholic, say me, understood what I was dealing with, then I could go, whoa, okay, I need help. How do I get this help? Well, I had to find somebody that could go to the deepest depths within myself that I can't go by myself. I can't do this inventory searching alone, going inside myself alone, because I can rationalize and justify every behavior, every non-behavior that I've ever done. Because I've had to. Because I had to live with myself. The journey that I've had to do to get well is I had to look at all my resentments. The resentments were huge in my life. Most people will never look at their resentments. I had to look at my resentments. I always knew who you were, what you did, and I know you hurt me, but I never really thought that I played a role in it. Well, that's the part that I looked at. What role did I play? For example, in a girlfriend resentment. Well, I let her into my life numerous times, even though she had cheated on me, even though, she wasn't honest with me. She gave me all the signs to not let her in my life, and I let her in my life. Who am I to blame but myself for continually letting somebody in my life who keeps hurting me? And every time I would let her in my life and let her hurt me, I knew deep down inside that I was doing it. So I created more guilt and shame within me. I just couldn't see it. That's what recovery has shown me. I looked at all my fears in my life. What drives my life? I learned that I wrote 50 fears down on a list. Every fear I ever had, I wrote on a list. And I realized 40 of them were not even real, but they drove 95% of my life's decisions. And I sat back and I went, holy shit. 40 fears that aren't real are driving 95% of my life. How do I not do that? Well, Creator's the way that I learned how to not do that. How did I learn about the resentments and taking responsibility for my part and not doing the same things over and over because I'm a habit creature? I'll keep doing the same things. I had to have Creator in the middle of it. And the final piece in this first round of inventory that I did when I was learning to be sober and learning about recovery is I had to look at all the relationships in my life and see which ones were causing me reoccurring trouble. Seeing where I was playing a role in the relationship that caused me trouble. And really what I found is I never really had a relationship with anybody else in my life. I had a relationship that was toxic with myself. Therefore, most of my relationships in my life weren't healthy. So recovery is actually a journey within myself to remove the things that don't serve me in my life and to remove the things that don't serve other people from me. And Roberta talked about it. She had to remove everything and change everything. That's what I had to do. Was that an easy process? No. It was damn painful. But because I came into recovery because I make bad decisions in my life. I burned down my life and my family's life and made them homeless, along with myself, because I make terrible decisions. And so I had to start letting somebody else make decisions in my life for me in the first few years. And once I started trusting the process and I started seeing results, I started having the hope that they were giving me would come true. And then I would see the track record of the hope coming true. I was able to go, yes, this is working. This is working. And not only was it working, I was feeling way better. And I felt authentic, like I was living who I'm supposed to be. And along this journey for me, this is a journey of finding love for myself. And once I can love myself and I'm good with who I am, I can now give this away. So it's a journey of self-discovery. It's a journey of removing toxic parts of myself. And it's a journey of recovery. The definition of recovery is the process of getting well after an illness or an injury. The illness or injury that I have is a spiritual one in nature. And it looks like pornography, looks like gambling, looks like anger, looks like cheating on your wife or your husband, looks like judging people, looks like gossip in the workplace, looks like gossip in the community, looks like anxiety, looks like depression, looks like mental health issues. But really, I find that God, Creator, can really help these things if I'm willing to really look at it. And I know the person who's taking me through the process believes in the process. And the thing about the journey of recovering from an illness or an injury, I have a spiritual, and by nature, I can get back to the true nature of who Creator wanted me to be. And that's what's happened to me. Creator designed me to be kind and loving, giving and forgiving, and serve him and his kids. But society and my journey of life conditioned me to be selfish by nature and self-centered. And through the process of my recovery, I'm able to give away everything that I have. And in return, I get everything that I ever wanted. And I'll finish with this. I had to lose it all to find it all. And I couldn't have done this without other people's guidance and having somebody spark and water and drop seeds into my life and water these seeds. And my dad was one of the first people that did that. And then I found a guide that helped me, and we watered these seeds. And here I am today, running a summit. I quit my whole career as a civil construction coordinator, where I made $130,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year. And I started this and made nothing. And today I just dedicate my life to this work. And because of that, I get everything I ever wanted, which is way different than what I thought I wanted when I was younger. So there's a lot more to learn about the spiritual malady. And I've just kind of taken a little bit of time to share a little bit of my own experience with it, and what it can, how can it expand. And, as we do more of these summits, and maybe one day I come to community and I can do more in-depth workshops. But for now, that's where we'll leave it. And what I would like to do to finish off my little session is get my buddy Robbie in here, and we're gonna sing a quick little song, and then I'm gonna get Shannda to do her part, and then we will get to the end of this event. So Robbie, if you could come and join me back here, I'm gonna push this chair out of the way, and you have a drum with you. Yeah. And I'm just gonna put down the headphones, and you guys get ready for a little song from me and Robbie. ekelo, e wakaya e waelo e. O gnashma yagna ekelo e. Chanu pawane chaupelo. Ya yo hey. O gnashma yagna ekelo. E wakaya e waelo e. O gnashma yagna ekelo e. So just on that song, we won't take up much time. I know we're running a little bit over, but Robbie and I learned that song at separate times. What that song really means is it's saying, Creator, have pity on us as we are trying. It's a personal pipe song that you get along your journey. Robbie and I both got our pipes last year. You got yours last year? I got mine last year, about a year ago. And when I got it, it's like, it's a symbolic saying, here, walk this road the best you can. And so him and I, we try to walk this road the best that we can. We're both 50-year sun dancers. We're both new pipe carriers. And we are going to try really, really hard. And we're going to fall and we're going to make mistakes. But that doesn't mean we stop trying. And there's another song called the Sundance Pipe Song that is different than this one, but it means you've done this for a long time. And Creator saying, we'll give you everything you want. We'll give you what you want. But we're not there yet. So we just keep trying. Robbie, anything?
Oh, what you said.
What I said?
Well, it's a new life and new beginning, I think, carrying a pipe and, I gotta, really, it's a big commitment, I gotta live a certain way of life, gotta watch what you say, what you think, what you do. It's tough, but it's also a beautiful life, eh?
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, bro. Okay. Last but not least, we are gonna get Shannda Teddy to cue herself up. Shannda, can you get in there and unmute yourself? Unmic yourself or uncamera yourself? So Shannda, friend of mine who I met a few years back, she's come so far. And I remember her like a deer in the headlights in her first little bit of recovery. She didn't know where to go. She didn't know what to do, but she had made it to treatment and she at least started at the start. And I think if there's any message that we can give for this summit, it's like we have to start somewhere and we don't stop. And there might be relapses and maybe there's not. It doesn't have to be a part of your story. But if you pray and you put tobacco down and you ask and you really want to change and you want to find a path for a new life, Creator will lay it out for you. And I saw that in this girl. And she's done everything that she needed to do and she trusted the process and she's just a pillar of strength in her own community. She's now working at the same treatment center that she got sober in, where she was lost in when I first met her. But I'm going to let her tell you her story. So, Shannda, you're up, girl.
Okay, Tansai Kanawitbit, known as Donegal Kabuk. I am polar bear woman. I am in my 4th year of recovery. I am an Inuit from the Northwest Territories, and I'm glad to be here.
Your camera.
Oh, it's not on? It's on.
Okay.
Yeah, it's okay. Hi. Okay, so I'm an Inuit from the Northwest Territories. I like to say I'm from Tuktoyaktuk, which is a place in this world. I came to Calgary when I was young and my mother was an alcoholic. It seems to be a theme today about our mothers. My mother was an alcoholic. She died before she could see me recovered or in recovery because I'm not fully recovered. It's a process. It started out with alcohol when I was very young. And then I went to treatment, the same treatment center that I'm working at now. I had gone there for alcoholism, mandated by CFS. I met my second husband there, not recommended. And then the alcohol progressed into crack cocaine. And then I had to go back to treatment, again, mandated by CFS. And Creator was guiding me to this woman. She was everywhere. She was following me everywhere. It felt like everywhere I turned, she was there. And so I had to do my step 4. I had to do my step 5. And through the treatment center, we do the steps in order. You're supposed to. But the thing about this is I had to have this done in a certain amount of weeks after I had written down my step 4, like treatment style. So they had this sponsor list that I had to pick from. And this lady was everywhere. She was just everywhere. And I would not have picked her, but I was desperate and I needed somebody. Because I was getting down to the cutoff date to do this step 5. Yeah. And so Creator, the day that I picked her, I was going to go and call her. Lo and behold, she's walking down the hallway and Creator was like, you have to ask her in person now. So I did. I was so scared. I was shaking. Because of the rejection, right? I've been rejected my whole life. This is why I'm an addict. Not fully knowing my worth. And yeah, so she was right there and Creator was like, you have to ask her in person. And so I did. And it was the most beautiful friendship I've ever had and anybody. So many things have gone through this lady and through me by just this one. It wasn't even coincidence. I knew he knew what he was doing when he put us two together. And so I asked her to be my sponsor and she said yes. And it was I don't know, it was scary. And then she said she'll do my step 5 with me. And so we go into the room at sunrise and I'm reading her these papers of resentments and fears that I had. And before we start, I'm like, do you have anything we have to sign? And she was like, what do you mean? And I'm like, oh, like an NDA. So you don't have to spread rumors about me. And she's kind of laughing at me. And she's like, no, that's not what we do. I don't think she's ever gotten that ever again or before me. So we do the step 5 and it's beautiful. And before I had gotten into treatment, I had sobered up on my own for 3 weeks, and I had gotten this referral to Musqueam somehow, and I had gone to sweat there. My mom had died just before I got into treatment. And so I did all the drugs that I can do until I had to go to treatment. So I had sobered up. I knew I needed to sober up. There was it was a last CFS visit with my kids before I had gone to treatment. I was at this time I'm living at the YWCA, a women's shelter by myself, and my children are with my older daughter. And anyways, I had stopped doing drugs, and I was there, and I was like at this shelter by myself, and I just remember texting my cousin who is in recovery as well. And all I said was, I'm done. I had been on like a 4-day binge, and that was like the last day before I had to stop before I go to treatment or something like that. And I had just texted him, I'm done. And he's like, he phoned me and he's like, I just finished smudging and like fasting for you. And I was like, what do you mean fasting? And he's like, I stopped eating and I stopped drinking in prayer of this. And for me to recover or find a miracle somewhere. And that was it. I was just like, holy crap. And I stopped, and I was there sober, and I was doing this on my own, and I was having all these difficulties. And then it was just so like alone. I heard somebody earlier mention that being alone is part of it. And so there is a lot of that. Like, it made me look back into my ancestral line. And we are a long line of lonely people, like we just clans of just families, I believe, in the far north from where I'm from. So the loneliness really humbled me in ways that I'm grateful that it came that way, for me anyways, because of how I'm willing to take the rejection now, because how willing I am to look at my own self before somebody tells me that this is wrong with me. I'm able to find that out and ask God and to remove these things. So I'm going to go back to where I was. I was at Sweat. So I got called from Musconwa to go to Lodge. And I gone to Lodge, and it was so crazy because it was my mom's good friends. They were running the Lodge. And I was there, and I couldn't believe it. Like, I fell to the ground, and I was just like, I surrender. Like, I gave everything. And I said, I'm so sorry that you couldn't see me this way, and I'm going to do this. And just because I was so desperate for something. And today I live this life of gratitude, and I'm able to help other women in their recovery, whether they're just getting started or they've been there for a while or here for a while. I get to help them, and I'm so grateful. It was mentioned that I work at the recovery place where I first got started twice. It was, and this happened at Lodge as well. I was running into counselors there at Lodge, and just, by coincidence, and it's not really that. I just got promotion. I got a promotion actually just now. Recently, I'll do full-time days. It started out at weekends, and it took me a while to get there. Like, I was pushed, like a creator was like pushing me. He's bringing all these people towards me to push me to take on this role and to come into myself. And so when I did, it's been a beautiful feeling to feel this whole, to feel this whole is a blessing. And I know my mom is really proud of me. I could feel it, the warmth. In the sunset, I could see it, especially when I'm going out to Lodge or when I'm looking in the sacred fire. I could feel that, like, that love, that presence is there. If you're struggling or if you're new and you need to find a sign, look for it in the smallest things you can, and Creator just makes them so great. so great. I get to do these amazing things with amazing people. I can't, it's hard for me to put into words how at home I feel right now. Thank you.
That's beautiful, Shannda. Thank you. And you know, as we've been talking today, we've heard numerous times that the person couldn't speak, right? They weren't good at public speaking, or, you know, Robbie, when I first met him, he couldn't even look you in the eye. Roberta kind of referred to that, and that's all of us, every single one of us on the screen today, none of us could speak in confidence. And what has happened over the years of each of us at our different intervals is we've been able to lift our heads up. We've been able to look the world in the eye. We've been able to come on a screen or in person and share our journey and get confidence out of that. And as we keep doing these things, like the word spiritual has the word ritual right in it. It's spiritual. And doing things over and over and over and over really changes us. Is it easy? No. But we can all lift our heads high today, and that goes for anybody out there. Recovery's possible for all of us. Just, do you want it bad enough, and are you willing to do what it takes, and maybe take some guidance from somebody else? So Shannda, I really want to thank you for your talk today and your courage to come and public speak on a forum like this, which is newer to Shannda, which is part of the reason I wanted to ask her, because I've just been watching her grow and grow and grow, and she did a great job today. So to kind of get close to the closing of this event, my father is going to say a few words on the spiritual disease, the family disease, and then he's going to do a closing prayer. And then I'm going to get my whole group, who's all in house. I'm going to open the curtain that I'm behind, and then we're going to sing out one final song at the end. I will take questions at the end first, and then we'll sing out if nobody has any questions. Anyway, okay, Dad, can you uncamera yourself and unmute yourself? There you
Still
go.
looking good.
Take it away.
Thank you, son. Awesome show today. When my son put this proposal together, I'll just read out a little bit what he wrote. Adhering to the philosophy of one person, one family, one community at a time. Very important statement. And here we shared individual experiences. And in my work, a lot of it has been around the family disease. It's very important part of our big book, our Bible of recovery in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's to the family afterward. That's how important it is in recovery. So, in my family experience with my son and his children, through the growth of his recovery, there's so many dynamics to deal with and to try to understand that, and maybe one of the topics that we can consider as a summit for in the future. So it's so important because it probably is the biggest part of our recovery. We're generally part of a family, whether it's even the single people that have a family in Alcoholics Anonymous, and we begin to build a foundation of a social life and being part of. And we need that. We talked about loneliness today, and we never have to be alone. That's one of our mottos. And so I just wanted to mention that we for family members to understand what roles do happen in the progressive of this chronic fatal disease if untreated. So, and it's all for the happiness of recovery. Heavenly Father, Creator, I thank you again for this summit. We thank you for the history, and especially with the answers of you taking over our life and guiding it toward a joy of Mother Earth, a joy of our interactions with family members and community members, and the social life, the work life, all the lives that we have in our society that we can enjoy being part of in a good way through recovery, and that we can be grateful one day at a time for the teachings and the guidance and the teachers that you give us. Hi, all my relations.
Awesome, Dad. Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, we're gonna wind down here. Is there any questions from the gallery for any of our speakers that you've heard today before I allow Claudia to say some closing words, and then we will close it down with a song on our end?
I just want to thank all the speakers. It's a beautiful day here in Fort McMurray, and I was gonna go out, and then I forgot about this. Then I remembered, and then myself recovered. I'm a residential survivor myself from Fort Chipewyan, Alberta. I really enjoyed all the speakers, and I have one addiction left. And that would be weed. And today's my 5th day. I was off it from January 2nd till July 2nd, and I started July 4th again. And now I'm off it again for this my 5th day, and I'm just trying so hard. It's my last addiction. So I don't say I'm sober unless I'm off that, but this really brought up some of my spirit. And I'm really, really thankful for, and I'm really having a hard time right now. My dad passed away August. So, yeah, so thank you so much, Marcy Cho.
Oh, Suzanne, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your vulnerability and sharing that. And, like we've said today, we got to start somewhere, right? And we don't stop. And that's what the personal pipe is about. So keep going, girl. And we all here will say prayers for you and your family with the passing. And thank you for sharing. Is there anyone else? Okay, Claudia, do you want to say a couple words before we sing this out?
Yes. I just want to say thank you, absolutely thank you for everyone's participation in this important and emotional event, and in your dad for the beautiful opening prayer, the closing prayer, the smudge. Also, the speakers were dynamic, amazing, each and every one of them, and the courage that they're showing to share their stories to help others. Amazing. I mean, there wasn't a dry tear here on my end of the screen, I'll tell you that. I have to freshen up. But thank you so much. You know, it touched me in many ways than you could know, as well as everybody else out there. I'm sure I have, you know, those stories have touched everyone one way or another. So Marcy Cho for that. And Bill, our facilitator, without you, then we wouldn't have been able to bring all of these pieces together. So Marcy Cho for that. I just want to, before we close and I hand it back over to you, I just want to make a gentle reminder to everybody to sign up. There's a link there for a wellness gift for participation. And so there is a link there. So just fill that out. Unfortunately, at this time, we're just going to say that it was an internal event, but we've gone external also. But we were just going to be providing gifts for our ACFN members at this time. So just to remind you to fill that out. Also, I'd like to, before I go, I'd like to say on the 25th, we invited Bill back for our subsequent talk, and that'll be held in the new year at the end of January. So January 25th, it is a Saturday. And maybe we can start a little bit earlier. I know that we started today at 1, but maybe we can begin at noon if that's okay. Something to think about. So I just wanted to put that out there. And of course, we will make a beautiful poster and get it out there on our platforms for ACFN. But of course, this event is open to absolutely everybody in community. I know our community is quite diverse with different groups within community. And so this is not just specifically for ACFN per se, it's for everybody in Fort Chip. So Marcy Cho, and thank you very much for joining.
Okay, and also a big shout out to all the members of ACFN and allowing us to be a part of your recovery journey and having you to be a part of ours. And, you know, thank you to the administration who reached out to me and asked for this to happen. Emphasis on Claudia, who I've gotten to know over the last few weeks. And yes, we will be doing another event on the 25th of January. We will do a little bit of tweaking and try to bring you the best event that we can a little earlier. Not sure what the topic's going to be yet, but we will sort all these things out. So in closing, we are going to sing that creator song again. So just give us a couple seconds here to get ourselves aligned and into the screen. And we're in my podcast studio. So if anyone is wondering, we are in a podcast studio here at my place. I do have a podcast called the UDR Cast that's on all podcast networks, and it also is on my YouTube channel at Billwardlife, and I have all sorts of recovery content on Billwardlife. I will warn you now that I am a very raw and real speaker. I did keep it pretty tame here for today, and I will continue to keep it tame. But if you do tune into some of the podcasting or YouTube things that I do, don't be discouraged if I drop the odd F-bomb. I work in prisons and I work on the streets, and the way that I approach the world in my recovery message has been very effective. And if it's not for you, that's fine, but it seems to work for a lot of people. So I can't change it. So I just wanted to let you know that. And thank you very much for having me. So just give us a second and we'll get going here.
Share my life. Oh, share my life. Share my life. Oh, share my life. Oh, share my life.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you all.
Merci, Joe.
Merci.
Wow, good show.
Hey, kids, that's it.